Welcome back to the deep dive. This is the place where we take complex source material, be it scientific research, market data, or, in today's case, something a little more philosophical, and really pull out the insights you need to walk away informed. Today's deep dive is something altogether different, and frankly, I think it's quite necessary.
It really is.
We are not analyzing geopolitical shifts or the latest AI breakthroughs. We're looking inward. We're analyzing a piece of reflective, motivational writing that marks the turn of the year, a piece we've titled The Quiet Threshold of 2026.
It's a fascinating text to dig into.
It is, because for so many of you, I'm sure the start of a new year feels like, I don't know, a firing squad of expectations.
That's a good way to put it.
It's this mandatory transformation, this immediate demand for perfection, the impossible checklist of resolutions. And the text we're looking at today offers a complete counter-narrative to all of that high-stress approach. It proposes a concept we're calling the gentle reset. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission here is to treat the tone of this text, its affirmations, and its specific, very liberating permissions as crucial data points. We're looking for the philosophical blueprint that allows anyone, especially those feeling overwhelmed, exhausted by information overload, or, just crushed by that traditional aggressive goal-setting model, to start fresh in a sustainable, gentle, and maybe above all, an effective way.
And what's so fascinating here is that function you mentioned. The text is acting almost like a sociologist or psychologist.
How so?
Well, texts that really gain traction at these major temporal milestones, like the beginning of a new year, 2026 in this case, they often articulate a collective emotional need, something society hasn't quite managed to voice for itself.
So it's reflecting something that's already there.
Exactly. And the deep need being reflected here is for stillness, for permission to slow down. It's a need for a different kind of ambition, one that's rooted in quiet persistence, not in all the noise and haste we're used to.
And that comes through right from the title.
Right from the central metaphor, the quiet threshold. That phrase alone is immediately revolutionary in a culture that treats renewal like a hostile takeover.
A hostile takeover, I like that.
It defines the year 2026 not as some dramatic event you have to prepare for with months of frantic planning, but as a low-stakes invitation. The text describes its arrival like this: not rushed, not loud, just quietly opening its doors and inviting us in. That immediately establishes an atmosphere of psychological safety. We aren't being forced to sprint. We're just invited to enter at our own pace.
That low-stakes entry point is so critical. As you said, culturally, January 1st often feels like a competitive sprint.
For sure.
If you don't have your 5-year plan drafted, your new diet started, your gym membership activated before the clock even strikes midnight, you already feel behind.
Already behind on day one. It's absurd when you think about it.
It is, and this text just dismantles that anxiety by placing the emphasis on the quiet nature of the threshold. It encourages us to just pause, to observe the door opening, and simply accept the invitation rather than desperately trying to charge through it.
Yes. No battering ram required.
So let's move into our first section and really deconstruct this quiet beginning, focusing on that core concept it presents: the fresh page.
Okay.
The source is so deliberate in detailing 2026's arrival as not rushed, not loud. It establishes stillness, but the concept of the fresh page itself is where the immediate philosophical kind of break happens.
Yeah, it's because that's a loaded term.
It is. When we talk about a year being a fresh page, the immediate traditional interpretation is that we have to wipe the slate clean, forget the past, ignore all the struggles, and start from some theoretical zero. But this text seems to reject that clean slate idea for something. Something much more nuanced. What's the key distinction the source is making here?
That nuance is absolutely crucial, and you're right, it's the pivot point away from that high failure rate resolution model we all know.
Right.
The text anticipates that assumption. It knows you're going to hear fresh page and think instant magical transformation. So it proactively counters this. It clarifies that 2026 is a fresh page, and this is the key part. Not because everything will suddenly change overnight, but because you get another chance.
So it's not about erasing, it's about continuing.
Exactly. It's a vital distinction between abrupt transformation and continuous journey. Abrupt transformation is built on this lie that context doesn't matter, that all the struggles and the momentum, good and bad, from the previous year can be instantly negated.
And that's just not how life works.
It's not. And that kind of thinking leads directly to what we see every January, that resolution collapse. We set goals based on who we wish we were, this idealized version of ourselves, not who we actually are in that moment. And the reality of continuity just catches up to us so fast.
So by framing it as another chance, the text acknowledges that journey. It's basically saying the story didn't end on December 31st. You just paused to turn the page, and the ink from the last chapter is still wet.
What a great way to put it, yes.
It completely reframes failure. It stops being this, this big final judgment. It's not an end state, it's just data. Data you accumulated in the last chapter that informs the first line of the new one.
Precisely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the reason that the aggressive reset fails so often is because it demands immediate perfection.
Right.
And when that perfection inevitably falters, because we're human, we stumble, we have a bad day, the entire effort gets discarded in this rush of shame. Well, I messed up my diet on January 4th, so I guess the whole year is a wash.
I've been there. I think everyone's been there.
We all have. But another chance philosophy removes the shame from the equation. It embeds failure, mistakes, and stumbles as expected, normal parts of the process. So it's inherently a system designed for high resilience.
And to make that resilience really tangible, the text immediately breaks it down. It itemizes the 3 specific gifts this fresh page offers. It's not just some generic chance to try harder.
No, it's very specific.
It's defined by 3 distinct and, I would argue, subversive permissions. Another chance to try again, another chance to rest, and another chance to grow slowly. Can we break down that trio? Because the inclusion of rest as a core gift, right alongside trying again, that feels like where the real philosophical heavy lifting begins.
It is. That trio is the foundational contract of the gentle reset. Let's start with another chance to try again. This speaks directly to the concept of maybe not redemption, but shame reduction.
Okay.
It validates the inevitable failures of 2025 without demanding self-flagellation. If you failed, you don't need a massive, brand new, perfect strategy. You just need to re-engage with the process. And that lowers the activation energy required to move forward. It makes starting again less daunting.
So it's less about a grand reinvention and more about a simple re-engagement.
Yes. But then you get to the second gift, another chance to rest. And this is the permission slip our culture so desperately needs. We live in a society that, well, it often equates productivity directly with worth.
For sure. Hustle culture.
Hustle culture, exactly. It views rest as a failure of ambition, or maybe a luxury that's reserved only for those who have earned it through utter exhaustion. This text positions recovery as a necessary prerequisite for action, not a failure of will.
So rest isn't the opposite of doing, it's part of the process of doing.
It's foundational to it. You cannot try again effectively if you are running on fumes. Rest is not antithetical to growth. It is the soil from which it grows.
That lands with a lot of weight. We see it all the time. People crashing and burning because they try to start a new year of high effort without paying off the accumulated energy debt of the last one.
They're starting in a deficit.
Right. So by granting permission for rest, the source is actually insisting on a more rigorous, more strategic, long-term approach to energy management.
And that leads us to the third gift, another chance to grow, slowly. This is maybe the sharpest critique of the whole modern narrative.
The word slowly is doing a lot of work there.
So much. It reframes growth as measured and continuous. It explicitly rejects the immediate, dramatic, get rich quick or lose 30 pounds in 30 days. Results we are constantly bombarded with. The emphasis on slowly turns patience into a core strength, not a liability.
So it's a feature, not a bug.
It's the central feature. And psychologically, this focus on slowness respects how true learning and behavioral change actually happen. We know that neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and form new connections, is often leveraged most effectively through small, repeated incremental actions, not one massive stressful effort.
Right, you can't cram for life.
You can't. Sustainable change requires absorption and reflection and repetition over time, and that cannot be rushed. The text is essentially guaranteeing that if you are moving slowly, you are actually building a deeper, more resilient foundation than the person who's sprinting for the finish line on January 5th and burns out by the 10th.
So the source argues that focusing on the continuity of the journey, the fact that the page has simply turned, not that the book has been erased, is the most effective way to set yourself up for real success. But I do have a critical question here, just to apply a bit of friction to this gentle approach.
Please.
Does this philosophy of prioritizing slowness and rest Does it risk encouraging complacency? For a listener who genuinely needs a spark, who needs motivation, does saying, you get a chance to rest or grew slowly, just give them an excuse to float through the next 12 months without any meaningful effort?
That is an important question. It's a fair critique if you stop reading at section 1. But the text doesn't advocate for passivity. It advocates for precision of effort.
Okay, precision. What do you mean by that?
Complacency is often rooted in a lack of clarity or a deep fear of failure. The gentle reset counters this not by demanding massive, scary effort, but by focusing on the minimal required movement.
The smallest possible step.
The smallest viable step. We'll see this even more clearly in section 2. But the key distinction is that slowly does not mean never. It means that when you do move, that movement is conscious, it's sustainable, and it's high quality. The philosophy is designed to eliminate the paralyzing effect of perfectionism, which is a far, far greater driver of inaction than simple laziness.
It's a huge point. We blame laziness when it's often just fear.
It's almost always fear. So by accepting a slower pace, you eliminate the pressure that causes most people to quit altogether. It's about ensuring 365 days of some movement, rather than, say, 10 days of frantic sprinting, followed by 355 days of shame-filled inertia.
That makes perfect sense. The goal is resilience, not speed. Which brings us perfectly into section 2, where the source really hammers home this philosophy of minimal requirement. It's about what you don't need to bring to this quiet threshold.
Yes.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the text actively rejects the very pressure points that define the traditional New Year experience for most of us.
It does.
It lists 3 things the listener absolutely does not need to possess on January 1st. Big plans, perfect goals, and having life all figured out. The sheer psychological relief contained in just those 3 negations it's profound. It strips away the armor of external expectation, the performance pressure that causes so much January anxiety.
Absolutely. Let's analyze the rejection of big plans and perfect goals first. This is a direct challenge to the high-demand productivity culture that insists that every moment has to be scheduled and optimized and mapped out years in advance.
5-year plan.
The 5-year plan, the 10-year plan. The text suggests that excessive, rigid planning often leads to what we call analysis paralysis. If the plan isn't absolutely perfect, we just don't start. Or if the plan hits an inevitable, unforeseen obstacle, the whole structure just collapses.
And then we feel like a failure because the plan failed, not because we failed.
Exactly. So by saying you don't need these things, the source frees up massive amounts of cognitive energy. Planning, strategizing, optimizing goals, especially when you're doing it under stress, it contributes significantly to decision fatigue. The gentle approach suggests focus that energy on the immediate necessary movement right in front of you, not on the abstract, distant, and frankly, imaginary future. The map will emerge as you walk the path.
And yet, the most radical rejection, as you hinted at earlier, is that you don't need to have life all figured out. That's the lie we all tell each other, isn't it? That once we hit a certain age or a certain milestone, we should just have all the answers.
It is the great communal fiction. No one truly has life figured out, yet the projection of competence is, culturally mandatory.
Have to pretend.
You have to pretend. The source validates the reality of complexity and uncertainty. By giving you explicit permission to be unsure, to be confused, or to just not have a clear roadmap, the text drastically lowers the activation energy required to step forward. You don't have to pretend to be a finished product. You are allowed to enter the year as a work in progress.
I think that's especially important for our listener, the learner, who seeks knowledge.
It is, because this text is validating the process of ongoing discovery. If you think you have everything figured out, you stop learning. You close yourself off. By embracing the uncertainty, you remain open to new data, new paths, and continuous self-revision.
So if those 3 traditional requirements, big plans, perfect goals, having it all figured out, are discarded, what replaces them? The text provides this seemingly revolutionary simplicity. All you need is to be here. Can we dive deep into that, being here? Is it simply physical presence, or does it imply a deeper state of mindfulness or acceptance? What is the true, non-negotiable baseline requirement for starting this gentle journey?
Being here is the essential, irreducible baseline, and it carries immense psychological and philosophical weight. We can analyze it through, I think, 3 crucial, interconnected layers that serve as the foundation of self-compassion.
Okay, what are they?
First, there's survival. Plain and simple, you made it. You endured 2025. This layer is about acknowledging the foundational resilience that just got you to this moment. It is a statement of fundamental competence. You survived.
That's the baseline.
That's the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Second, there's presence. This is a willingness to engage with the reality of the present moment, whatever that moment entails. The joy, the fatigue, the uncertainty. It means pulling your attention out of the shame of the past and the fear of the future and anchoring it firmly in the now. This is the mindful state that's required for any effective action.
So survival, presence, and the third.
And third is acceptance. This is accepting yourself as is tired, unsure, imperfect, and unfinished. There is no prerequisite of perfection or preparedness needed to begin. If your only required input is presence and acceptance, you eliminate the biggest hurdle, which is the fear of inadequacy. And that fear is the engine of procrastination.
So being here becomes this profound philosophical statement about inherent worth. You don't have to earn your right to start the year. You just have to exist within it.
Exactly.
And to help facilitate that acceptance, the source provides this necessary, almost therapeutic acknowledgement of the past. It offers explicit validation of difficult emotional states. It specifically calls out that if 2025 was hard for you, you're not alone. And it validates feelings of being tired, confused, or unsure about the future, and concludes with that powerful little phrase, "That's okay."
This contextual analysis is fundamental to the gentle reset. Before the text asks you to take a single step forward, it provides psychological safety by normalizing struggle.
It's saying your struggle is normal.
It's normal. When a widely distributed text acknowledges that the preceding period was hard, it externalizes your individual struggle. It transforms your personal pain into a collective experience. And this shared vulnerability is incredibly powerful in reducing that sense of isolation. Well, it wasn't just me.
Right.
The primary function here is dismantling what I'd call shame inertia. Shame, which arises when we feel we should be fine but we're not, is the #1 cause of people freezing up and refusing to try again.
The what's wrong with me feeling.
That's it. So by saying you're not alone and that's okay, the text proactively reduces that burden of shame. It validates your emotional reality. It's essentially telling you your feelings are valid data, and now we can proceed from an honest starting point. If we start from shame, we start from a deficit. We start from acceptance. We start from a position of relative strength.
That psychological safety net you mentioned brings us to the core contract of 2026. The text states clearly what it doesn't ask of you. It says, it doesn't ask you to be perfect, it only asks you to keep going. Yep. That contrast between perfection and persistence seems to be the entire thesis of the gentle reset.
I think it is.
But let me challenge this phrasing for a moment. Doesn't keep going sound a little vague? If I'm struggling and my only goal is to keep going, how do I measure my progress? Does this lack of a specific outcome risk a lack of accountability?
That is the essential critical tension in this philosophy. And it's a great question. If we interpret keep going through the lens of traditional productivity, it does sound vague and fluffy. But the text is asking us to redefine accountability itself.
So it's not about hitting targets.
It's not. Accountability here is not tied to a specific flawless outcome. It's tied to sustained effort and presence.
Okay, explain that more.
The contrast is critical. Perfection is static. It's brittle. It's an unsustainable ideal that just collapses at the first mistake, and that immediately triggers the all-or-nothing mindset, which is the enemy of continuity.
Right, the I blew it mindset.
The I blew it mindset. Keeping going, on the other hand, is dynamic. It's flexible. It embraces resilience and adaptation. It acknowledges the inevitable stumbles, but emphasizes that the objective is the continuous movement itself, however slow or messy that movement is.
So from a behavioral psychology perspective?
From that perspective, accountability is sustained, not by the fear of missing a perfect goal, but by the reinforcing power of persistence. The measure of success is whether you re-engaged after you stumbled. Did you get back up? The goal isn't faultlessness. The goal is flexibility and continuous adaptation. It's the ultimate permission to be imperfectly human, coupled with the rigorous demand to simply remain engaged in the process.
That dynamic notion of accountability flows perfectly into Section 3, where the philosophy really pivots from permissions, what you don't need to do, to active intentions, what you do promise.
The how.
The how. These are simple, attainable promises, and the source takes great care to state these are not promises to be flawless, but focused behavioral shifts. These are the practical, measurable anchors of the gentle reset.
This is where it gets very actionable.
It does. Let's start with what I think is the biggest shift in mindset. Subsection 3.1, the dual promise of kindness. The text focuses on kindness to others and to ourselves.
And the and is key.
It is. We are conditioned to understand and practice kindness to others. That's a social contract we get. But why is the source insisting that self-kindness must be elevated to the same level of practical and moral necessity? Why are they a dual promise, and what's the specific friction point there?
The pairing is highly strategic because, for so many people, self-kindness feels, I don't know, counterintuitive or self-indulgent, or even something that has to be earned.
I'll be kind to myself when I achieve X.
Exactly. We often internalize this idea that self-criticism is the engine of improvement, that if we're hard on ourselves, we'll be more motivated. The text completely refutes this by making self-kindness a non-negotiable foundational promise.
And making them dual.
By establishing them as dual, the text elevates self-kindness from a passive wish to an active moral and behavioral commitment. It's saying you can't have one without the other. We cannot give authentically to others if our own internal reservoir is depleted by self-recrimination and exhaustion. The promise is not about self-indulgence, it's about resource management. Self-kindness is the fuel that prevents the engine from seizing up.
This leads directly into the necessity of the adjacent promise in the text, to forgive ourselves for mistakes. This isn't just a passive feeling. The text frames it as an active decision. Why is self-forgiveness a non-negotiable prerequisite for forward movement?
Because unforgiven mistakes are the heaviest psychological anchor we carry. Full stop. If we're constantly dragging the weight of unforgiven errors from 2025, that emotional and cognitive burden acts as a constant internal friction, a drag on the system.
It's wasted energy.
So much wasted energy.
Yeah.
The energy consumed by self-recrimination, the replaying of mistakes, the self-shaming, is energy that cannot be used for productive movement or presence in the current moment.
So forgiveness is a practical tool.
It's an act of cognitive triage. That's what it is. It's the process of filing the mistake away as data, absorbing the lesson, and then closing the emotional loop so that the energy can be repurposed. If a single mistake means the end of the journey, we become paralyzed by the fear of making another one. But if we commit to self-forgiveness, the mistake becomes merely a temporary detour. This contract is fundamentally about freeing up mental and emotional bandwidth that was previously dedicated to self-punishment.
That newly freed energy then enables the second behavioral anchor in subsection 3.2, celebrating the small wins. This, again, requires a massive habit shift for most people.
A huge one.
Our culture is focused on the massive, the monumental, the socially visible achievements. Why is actively shifting our focus to celebrate small, incremental progress more rewarding and ultimately more sustainable?
This is a direct application of behavioral science, specifically leveraging positive feedback loops. Human motivation relies on the relationship between an action and its reward. In the traditional model, the reward, that monumental achievement, is often months or even years away. If the reward is too distant, the journey just becomes this endless, unreinforced slog, and motivation quickly dies on the vine.
There's nothing to keep you going.
Nothing. So by celebrating the small wins, and that could be the sustained effort, a small act of kindness, choosing the healthy option for lunch, or simply showing up when you wanted to quit, we reinforce the positive behavior immediately. Each celebration releases a small, necessary dose of dopamine, and it shortens the time interval between action and reward.
So you're creating a chain of positive reinforcement.
You're creating a highly sustainable feedback loop that doesn't rely on the eventual distant success. It provides necessary emotional fuel on a daily basis, ensuring you keep going. It trains your brain to find reward in the process, not just the destination.
I worry, however, that the concept of small wins can be interpreted in a way that risks minimizing genuine achievement. If I celebrate reading one page, am I just letting myself off the hook for not reading the whole book? How do we balance celebrating the small while still maintaining sight of the larger trajectory?
The balance lies in how we define the win itself. A small win, in the context of the gentle reset, is not a consolation prize. It is proof of persistence.
Ah, okay.
Celebrating reading one page isn't about the quantity of the page. It's about celebrating the victory over inertia. It's about celebrating the choice to put down the phone and engage with the difficult task. The ultimate goal isn't just reading the book. It's becoming the kind of person who consistently chooses to read, even when tired. The small win reinforces the identity, not just the action.
So the win is the choice itself.
The win is the choice to overcome inertia. Inertia is overcome by the application of force. The smallest application of force, one page, 1 minute of movement, is still a victory over standing still. And once you are moving, the next step becomes exponentially easier.
Which brings us perfectly to the final behavioral anchor. Subsection 3.3, the practice of incremental motion. The source tells us to promise to move forward, even if it's just one step at a time. This is the core anti-sprint manifesto, focusing on maintaining momentum without burning out.
Yes.
We often confuse movement with speed. The culture demands speed. This philosophy demands only movement, regardless of its velocity. Deconstructing this phrase, focusing on the power of one step, is essential for our listener, who so often feels paralyzed by the sheer size of their goals.
This is perhaps the most practical psychological tool that the text provides. When movement feels impossible, when inertia is overwhelming due to exhaustion or the sheer scale of the goal, the thought of completing a large task is it's paralyzing. This is the phenomenon of high activation energy.
It's too big to even start.
It's too big. So focusing on one step preserves momentum and combats that deep inertia by lowering the mental barrier of commitment to near zero.
Give us an example.
Sure, if I have to write a 30-page report, that's paralyzing. I'll just check my email instead. But if I commit to writing just one sentence, the task is non-threatening. I can do that. But once I perform that one small action, I have broken inertia, and the next sentence is automatically easier.
You've started.
I've started. And this is the difference between aggressive rushing, which relies on high amounts of depletable willpower and risks a rapid crash, and quiet, persistent movement, which leverages habit and minimal force for maximal long-term yield. The gentle reset understands that consistent, low-level effort is vastly superior to sporadic, high-intensity effort. It conserves energy and ensures longevity. This is the rigorous discipline of quiet persistence.
That analysis on quiet, persistent movement brings us seamlessly into Section 4, where the text addresses the ultimate external pressure point, our timeline, and how we compare it to others.
The big one.
The big one. The text provides crucial validation for varied internal rhythms throughout the year. It acknowledges that some days will be full of motivation, but also that some days will be quiet and slow. And then the crucial synthesis is, both are part of the journey.
This acceptance of internal cycles is paramount for preventing those devastating cycles of guilt and subsequent burnout.
Tell me more about that.
Our modern schedules often operate under the assumption of linear, constant energy output, this idea that every day must be a high motivation day, a productive day.
Right.
So if a motivated day is good, then a quiet, slow day gets labeled bad or a failure. And this categorization creates an adversarial relationship with our own natural human rhythms.
We're fighting against ourselves.
We are. Life and human energy, it operates cyclically. The quiet, slow days are not delays in the project. They are necessary periods of integration, rest, recovery, and preparation. By declaring both motivated bursts and slow periods as equally valid components of the journey, the source grants explicit permission for necessary recovery without the accompanying guilt. It's an essential truth. You cannot be on 100% of the time, and attempting to do so is a guaranteed path to depletion.
This acceptance of internal pace directly impacts the advice given on recovery and healing. The source provides a very specific and I think very necessary instruction. You don't have to rush your healing.
So important.
This advice counters some really powerful societal pressures. Today, there's this drive to, monetize our healing, to turn trauma into a motivational speech, or to immediately jump back into the productivity machine the moment we feel slightly better, before we've fully integrated the experience. What kind of societal pressures is this specific advice pushing back against?
The societal pressure we face is the pressure to optimize our suffering.
Wow, optimize suffering.
That's what it feels like. We're told, implicitly or explicitly, that if we are not visibly getting over something quickly, if we're not immediately back to peak performance, we are failing in some way. The expectation is that healing should be linear, visible, and fast.
And it never is.
It's never any of those things. The text pushes back by recognizing that deep emotional integration and healing are inherently non-linear and non-competitive. Rushing healing often means just suppressing the deep work that needs to occur. It means intellectualizing a problem before the emotion has been truly processed.
The spiritual bypass.
A spiritual bypass, exactly. Healing requires time and stillness and patience, and those elements cannot be accelerated without risky relapse or simply accumulating unresolved emotional debt. The source grants us a long-term medical leave from the pressure to achieve instant wellness. It validates the duration and depth of a necessary recovery.
This focus on self-pacing and internal integrity is the perfect antidote to the most toxic element of modern goal setting, the comparison trap. The text advises you don't have to compare your path to anyone else's. This is so vital, especially when we are most vulnerable at the start of a new year. Let's dedicate some time here to the cognitive mechanism of why comparison is so destructive to sustainable growth. Why is it so toxic?
Comparison is toxic to sustainable growth because it fundamentally corrupts our metric of success and our source of motivation. We fall prey to what's called social comparison theory, which states that we naturally evaluate our own status by comparing ourselves to others. The problem arises because we are comparing two completely unequal data sets.
Unequal how?
On one side, we have our complicated internal three-dimensional reality, our chronic fatigue, our unseen mistakes, our genuine doubts, our slow days, our whole messy behind the scenes. On the other side, we are comparing that to someone else's curated external highlight reel, the one they choose to broadcast on social media or during brief conversations. It is a comparison that is mathematically designed to make us feel perpetually inadequate because we're judging our messy journey against someone else's polished destination photo.
That's a powerful way to put it.
So by rejecting comparison, the source insists on the integrity and the singular value of your individual journey. The simple promises we discussed, kindness, small wins, incremental movement, are all inherently inward metrics. Comparison forces you outward, chasing goals that may not align with your true needs simply because they look successful on someone else's timeline. It redirects your focus and it drains energy that should be used for your own persistence.
And the ultimate validation, and perhaps the single most freeing statement in the entire text, is the conclusive analysis on pacing. Your timeline is yours.
Goosebumps. So simple.
It's so simple, but the immense power of claiming autonomy over one's personal development speed cannot be overstated. If a listener truly internalizes that sentence, what does it mean practically? It's not just a nice slogan. What specific agency does this grant us?
That sentence is the philosophical culmination of the gentle reset. It reclaims agency. Agency from societal norms, from the expectations of family, peers, and that relentless arbitrary clock of productivity.
So practically.
Practically, it means you have the authority to veto any external standard that attempts to impose a deadline on your emotional, professional, or personal growth. It asserts that there's no universal should.
I should be married by now. I should have a house by now.
All of those. Your age, your previous experiences, the demands of your current life, all of these factors create a singular, bespoke timeline that only you can truly own and manage. It gives you the power to look at a goal that conventional wisdom says should take 6 months and calmly decide that for your resources and your capacity, it will take 18 months. And that is not a failure. That is an act of self-honesty and rigor. And this raises an important question that I think summarizes our entire deep dive. If we fully accept and own our own timeline, how does that fundamentally change our definition of success in 2026?
Okay.
If success is no longer tied to hitting externally prescribed milestones by arbitrary dates, it has to become defined by internal metrics.
So success shifts.
It shifts from external accolades, the promotion, the published work, the massive income, to internal fortitude, adherence to the simple promises, sustained imperfect effort, and increased peace and self-kindness. Success becomes the ability to simply stay in the game, regardless of the speed, because you are honoring your own capacity.
That reframing of success shifting from external performance to internal persistence, that's the entire point of the quiet threshold.
It is.
We've systematically dismantled the pressure points of the new year, defined the core simple promises, and established the necessary autonomy over our pace. Now let's bring this deep dive to a close by just synthesizing the overall philosophy, the gentle reset. This text has successfully guided us into 2026, offering permission to be imperfect and providing a realistic understanding that we are starting a marathon, not a sprint. We've seen the profound value in rejecting massive, paralyzing plans in favor of simply being present and in embracing the essential, resource-conserving nature of self-forgiveness and incremental movement.
The gentle reset is not a lesser form of self-improvement. It's not the easy way out. It is an operating system overhaul designed for high resilience and long-term viability. It replaces the high failure rate software of perfection and speed with the inherently sustainable software of patience and persistence.
I like that framing, an operating system.
And the source material culminates with a series of final wishes and concluding affirmations. And it's vital to see these desires not as abstract hopes, but as the inevitable results of following the gentle philosophy.
So they're outcomes, not wishes.
They're outcomes. It wishes the listener peace in your mind, strength in your heart, and hope in places you didn't expect.
And you can trace each of those back to the promises.
You can. Peace in the mind comes from relinquishing the need for perfection and releasing the burden of an impossible timeline. Strength in the heart comes directly from practicing self-forgiveness and choosing, every day, to keep going. And hope in unexpected places arises precisely when we focus on celebrating small wins. We suddenly notice the beauty and progress in the incremental efforts we would otherwise overlook while we're waiting for the colossal, distant reward.
The wishes also intentionally focus on these small, sensory, human experiences that ground us in the present. Calm mornings, gentle nights, and moments that remind you why life is worth continuing.
Hmm.
And again, these outcomes are directly linked to the promises made. A calm morning is the direct result of not rushing and not having a crushing, rigid plan. A gentle night is the result of accepting that both motivated and slow days are okay, preventing the guilt that so often steals our sleep.
It all connects.
And finally, the text offers one powerful concluding affirmation that summarizes the required perspective shift that's necessary for this entire journey. You're doing better than you think.
This is such a critical affirmation. It directly challenges the pervasive feeling of inadequacy that drives so much of our New Year anxiety.
We're so hard on ourselves.
Unbelievably so. We are socially conditioned to focus exclusively on our perceived failures, the resolutions we broke last year, the goals we missed, and we completely ignore the enormous, steady stream of basic resilience, kindness, and sheer effort that got us to the threshold of 2026 in the first place.
We don't give ourselves any credit for just getting through it.
None. By stating you're doing better than you think, the text forces us to reevaluate our internal scoring mechanism. It encourages us to give ourselves credit for the daily acts of persistence, the quiet moments of self-kindness, and the simple act of showing up. These unheralded acts are fundamentally more important and more sustaining than the dramatic headline achievements that often come at the expense of our energy and our peace. It's an essential, compassionate counterbalance to the self-criticism that usually begins with the dawn of January 1st.
That brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, as you step over this quiet threshold. The source concludes with the most freeing statement of all, bringing everything back to autonomy and possibility. The story is still being written. It affirms that nothing is set in stone. The narrative of 2026 is still open, it's malleable, and it's entirely yours.
So, based on the principles of patience and kindness and incremental action outlined in this deep dive, the foundation of the gentle reset, we encourage you to consider this very specific, powerful question. What is the immediate small choice you can make right now, in the next 60 seconds, to influence the tone and direction of the next paragraph of your unwritten story?
And not a large life change, not a perfect goal.
No. One single gentle choice that confirms your commitment to your own unique timeline and pace.
Perhaps that choice is simply to consciously take a slow breath, to actively forgive yourself for a small, nagging mistake from yesterday. Or, if you're feeling overwhelmed, to use that permission slip we talked about to let the next hour of your day be quiet and slow. Whatever that choice is, make it with kindness, because that is the most powerful starting force of all. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the quiet threshold of 2026. We wish you calm mornings, gentle nights, and immense peace as you walk forward, one sustainable step at a time.